What's up, guys? So my last video, as I'm sure you guys all know, was a Q&A that I was tagged in by Notes Reviews, and one of the things that was supposed to happen with that video is he was going to answer a bunch of questions alongside the original 13 that came out, and he just posted that video this morning. Now, I was thinking I could come up with a bunch of questions too, and that might be great, but I really liked his friend's questions so much that I'm gonna answer those. Now, unfortunately, today I don't have the help of my lovely girlfriend, so it's just me today, and my coffee. Thank goodness for coffee. Anyway, let's go to the questions. Oh, 1 decade of music. That is a tough one. Can I just custom create a decade out of all of my favorite years? No? Damn. The 90s. Because I get to listen to all of Dream Theater's masterpieces, all of Fate's Warning's masterpieces, all of Pain of Salvation's masterpieces. I mean, if you're a prog metal fan, the 90s is kind of where it's at. The current decade's pretty good too. The 70s is also kind of where all the good classic prog is. First album I remember buying. That would have to be Boston's Greatest Hits. I actually have that very copy of it right here. My parents were members of the Columbia House Record Club back in the day. Buy one album at full price and get 20 for a penny. And I can't remember if it was I bought that album at full price while they chose a bunch of them for a penny or the other way around. But that was the first album I remember actually saying, here, let me contribute some of my hard-earned financial gains towards a piece of art. The first album I remember walking into a store and buying would be my CD copy of Tool's Lateralis, which I probably still have it. It's in the basement somewhere. Not a bad first album to go and buy. Nope. If I used to love the band, I still love the band. I've never fallen out of love with a band before, and it's just the way it is. I can't hate a band I've loved for years. The closest thing to that is probably Led Zeppelin for me. I never really got totally into Led Zeppelin, but I mean, earlier on, of course, it's part of you gotta research what's good in rock music. So, of course, I was listening to a lot more Led Zeppelin back in the day. These days, I know I'm not interested in them. I think the answer to this one's pretty much the same. There aren't too many bands that I hate so much on first listen and then have grown to enjoy. Usually, if I hate something that much, I'm probably hating it for a good reason. But there are individual albums and individual songs that fit the bill for me. Duron Gray's Ouroboros album, for instance, I actually wrote a really strongly worded negative review of that album for Ultimate Guitar back when it came out. And now I would list it among my 10 favorite albums of all time. So that shows how that shifted, but whole bands' discographies, or just whole bands in general, I've never really hated a band and then grown to like them. I'm usually pretty open-minded. If I hear a band, I usually don't hate them on first impression, no matter how much I dislike the genre of music they're playing. So if I hate them, there's a good reason. I think the genre that shocks most people that I enjoy is nu metal. Like I said in my last Q&A video, nu metal was sort of the genre that I grew up with in terms of, first exposure to heavy metal. I was listening to Korn and Limp Bizkit and Slipknot day in, day out on Much Music. They would play the video for Freak on a Leash or Got the Life like 3 times a day, and I remember really enjoying that music. In fact, I wasn't even really much of a guitar player yet when I first heard these bands. So when I first started playing guitar, I knew that Korn, in particular, played 7-string guitars. So I knew right away I was going to play a 7-string. And I probably started on the 7-string a lot sooner than a lot of other guitarists who eventually transitioned. Partly because of Korn, a little bit because of Dream Theater too, but Korn definitely helped. That one's a really hard question to answer because I switch between laptops and accounts, and I've had a laptop with iTunes with all of those stats, and it was stolen many years ago. It would be very difficult to tell you what album I've listened to the most. If I had to take a wild shot in the dark guess, Pain of Salvation's Scarsick, which isn't even my favorite album of theirs, but I do remember the first day the song America leaked, I listened to it probably about 45 times. So I wouldn't be surprised if that album has the highest number of plays of any record I own. Okay, I can split this into 2 categories. Bands I've seen live, local bands, and bands that I've gone out of town to see. So local band I've seen live the most is probably my buddy Ian's old band Blue Shift. I think they renamed themselves The Active. Unfortunately, they're not around anymore, but I've seen them like 3 or 4 times. Big fan of their work. They unfortunately don't have a lot of recorded stuff up to show, but they should still have a Bandcamp page, and I'll link it in the description. The song Rabbit Hole is just incredible. As for out-of-town performances, the bands that I've seen the most, Sonata Arctica and Delane. Actually, Camelot too, because those bands I've all seen twice. I wouldn't really count Sonata Arctica because, funny story, I saw them, that was the first show out of town I'd ever seen, and that was with my girlfriend, and we saw them again, only we saw them in Kitchener. We had bumped into some fellow fans, and they decided to come sit and drink with us, and they offered some shots, and I said, surprise me, and they came back with several shots of tequila. This was before Sonata Arctica actually appeared on the stage, and I basically passed out for their set. I don't remember too much of Sonata Arctica's set, which is too bad because they had just released my favorite album of theirs, The Ninth Hour, prior to that show, so I would have loved to see some of those songs live, but I was too busy sleeping. Oh, another tough one. Probably Transatlantic. I'm a fan of Neil Morse's stuff, but I'm not a Christian for one, so his solo albums don't really have as much appeal to me lyrically as they do musically. And I do love Spock's Beard, and of course like Dream Theater, Marillion, like all the bands that are associated with Transatlantic, but I think Transatlantic is like a perfect meeting of like 4 prog heads from different bands that all sort of utilize their talents in a very synergistic way that I've never really experienced with any other side project. This is the kind of thing that if all 4 of their bands ever just like completely crap out, I'd love to see Transatlantic become the main project. My vinyl copy of Korn's debut album, I think it cost me about $60-$70. But that's probably the album I spent too much money on. Also, my vinyl copy of Tool's Lateralis. That was pretty expensive. Um, I also bought a copy of Harmonium's Leptad XL, which was like the box set with the art book, CDs, DVD of a live performance of the album. Um, I bought that while the HMV in Sudbury was closing, so I got a deal on it, but it was still over $100. So I spent too much money on that, but I got a deal on it, so I don't think I spent too much money on that. Most prized or sentimental? Well, that would have to be my copy of Boston's Greatest Hits. This is the original copy I bought back in my childhood, and it's pretty worn out, but it still plays very well, and that's pretty cool. Another prized album in my possession is my copy of King Crimson's Discipline on vinyl, because it's a first pressing with some extra guitar tracks that Robert Fripp deleted from all subsequent releases up until I think it was this year or last year when they finally re-released the album, like reissued it, and they put a version of Mate Kudasai on it that has Fripp's original guitar parts. Anyway, that's the end of my Q&A. Thank you for watching again. Remember to smash that button. You know which one. Like, smash it. Like, really smash that button. Like, I want to see destruction. Because I'm still working on my coffee. This episode brought to you by coffee.